Hi, I'm Chloe Learey. I'm the Executive Director of the Winston Prouty Center in Brattleboro. And I am excited to show you our latest thinking about our property development project. This is, we are now in June of 2023, and we have been doing some planning and thinking about how to fulfill our dream of helping our community solve its housing crisis by building housing on our campus. So we've had a planning team. We're ready to share our conceptual design. It's really important for people to understand it's conceptual. We are ready to share it in the hopes of getting feedback and making sure that we are on the right track and leading this project for our community. So I'm going to take a few minutes to walk you through some slides so you can understand sort of how we got where we are and then see where we're hoping to go. So the first slide you're looking at is an overview of the campus and from Google Earth, actually. So you'll notice that north is up in this picture. The yellow lines are Highway 91, and our campus is right there, Austin Drive. You can see the main part of campus with the different buildings that make up sort of the core part of the campus. So this really gives you context of where the campus is connected, but a little bit separate from town, mostly by the highway. It looks like it's way off in the woods. If you zoom out a little bit, though, you start to see how the campus is really not so far. You can see downtown Brattleboro. Again, north is still up in the picture, but you can see that we're close to the neighborhood. You can actually, for those of you familiar with Brattleboro, we're close to the hospital, the high school, the shopping plaza where Market 32 is. We're really not, I think, just about a mile from downtown. So you can see that we have lots of woods, and but that we're really surrounded by a neighborhood and connected to, even though it feels separate and that is not quite, right next to, it is actually next to a neighborhood. So, and then you zoom out just a little bit more and you see, so you just get a bigger picture of where we are sitting in connection to West Brattleboro, downtown Brattleboro, and if you can imagine, sort of to the south, Guilford Center. So we're really, this property is in a very interesting place tied to water and sewer infrastructure. It's already a developed area, even though it's a lot of woods. The main part of campus is really part of a developed area, and this is where we're really focusing, is on the main central part of campus. So switching a little bit, we're going to go through a series of drawings that sort of give context to how we are thinking about the design of what we're proposing. Again, conceptual, it's an idea. Who knows how we move forward, but it's important to share the idea and get feedback and reactions. So you're again looking at an overview of the campus in this slide that shows sort of the core of campus. There's a big hill that gives beautiful views. Again, for those of you who've been here, it's a big green open space surrounded by woods. And then in this picture, north is actually to the right. So Highway 91 is there at the bottom going north to south. And that green space really shows a heart of the campus. So that's a really important part of what we want to protect in terms of making this, continuing to build the community that's here. There are lots of tenants on campus. It's already really full and vibrant, and there's some really strong assets that we wanted to take into consideration as we talked about development. So this image of really a core green space that is again, the heart of the campus is part of our thinking in this design. We also want to consider, are there spaces that we really wouldn't want to develop on? And so what you see in the oval, sort of orangish oval circles here are places that we are unlikely to build. So there's a soccer field that gets a lot of use by the community, that down there near the highway. And then you see an oval on, again, that green hill that lots of people walk up and sort of leads off into the woods. That is a pretty special place, and we want to keep it special. I'll just note that there's sort of a boundary, a line that sort of we're thinking of contains what we think of as the infill or campus development. It's just it's not a property line or anything. It's just that surrounding black line that shows sort of the main part of campus is the area we are considering for this time. So it's not a property boundary. It's just sort of a way to designate where we're thinking. We also want to be really considerate of how our campus and this development would overlap with the neighborhood. So the green, we're connected to, if you remember from those overview pictures, there's residential homes nearby, and being sensitive and thoughtful about whatever we do on campus and how that interacts with the neighborhood is an important consideration as we thought about this conceptual design. And then we also had some wetlands mapped, because obviously we're not going to build where the wetlands are. So this picture shows where, so again, defining the space of where we might consider doing development on this campus, and looking at the natural resources and thinking about how to protect those. So this is defining those spaces as well. And finally, one of the considerations that's really key is an asset. One of the main assets of this campus is the view. So up at the top of the hill, you can see all the way up to Connecticut River Valley. Even the middle of the hill, the views of Nantasket, and even as you come down onto campus, even though you're sort of coming lower, the views are really astounding. And so whatever happens here, whatever kind of buildings go up, or wherever we put those buildings, we want to make sure to enhance or keep as much of the view as possible, because we appreciate it, and we think it's one of those assets it's important to maintain. So those were some of the considerations around development. And then there are a lot of people who use the campus right now. There are walking trails, and it's open to the public from dawn to dusk, and that thinking about pedestrian traffic and how that flows on the campus right now, and considering that in terms of when we think about what we might build here, how to think about how pedestrians would continue to use the campus. So this sort of offers some outlines of what that looks like. Again, north is to the right, that main part of campus. You can see the outline of existing buildings. So here's a drawing of what exists on campus right now, sort of a different view. In this view, we're looking from the highway would be sort of cutting down on the bottom left corner. So you see the tallest building on campus is Holton Hall, just to orient you for those of you who've been here. There's Croker Hall where the gym is. There's Thomas Hall, a couple of different buildings. And when we're thinking about how to add, residential, it's really, there's again a lot happening on this campus already. It's fully occupied by tenants, all different kinds of tenants. And we want to keep that vibrancy, and anybody who wants to stay on campus, we want to keep here. And so thinking about how best can we use this land, and think about where we want to go, and how to add that residential component. So we started thinking about what if some of the buildings weren't here, and in particular we were thinking of the buildings that are not the best built buildings. They use a lot of fossil fuels, and how can we consider taking space and using that space differently as a resource, as a possibility. Again, I want to emphasize this is conceptual. It's our best thinking right now. It's where we've evolved to, but it's not set in stone. So hoping again to get feedback from folks about what this would mean. And so taking away some buildings opens up some land. And we start to fill in that land and thinking about, again, all the things that we thought about, the view, how the pedestrians move, where the wetlands are. You can actually see on this drawing the shaded out, where the wetlands are, and starting to put in some, what we imagine different residential units could be. So down at the bottom of the page is sort of where the Maple Street is curving around. You can sort of see a faint outline of that. We're actually thinking about changing that intersection at the entrance to campus, maybe a three-way stop to help with traffic calming and to help make a better entrance onto campus. And then you start to see different kinds of housing outlined, or different kinds of buildings that would include residential. So some buildings staying, some buildings going, and starting to think about what would take the place of that. This next slide shows you sort of big on the main part of campus where the larger, the more dense housing would be. We're talking about apartment buildings that would be 3 to 4 stories high. Nothing would be taller than Holton Hall on campus. Again, thinking about the views and how to maximize the views, really honoring how to fit into the landscape. So they are big buildings, and but they fit nicely. Sort of, I think you'll see as we go through this, have the potential to fit nicely into the landscape. So we're talking about large apartment buildings. We're talking about community spaces, including indoor recreation space. So the building that's sort of at the top of the drawing is imagined as an indoor gym, because we would be taking down potentially in this concept the building that has the gym in it, but it's a really incredibly important resource to our community. So how can we replace that? And then our campus is used by so many different community groups. So how do we, there are blood drives, and when the farmers market's here, big meetings are here. It's really it's a gathering place. And so we would like to magnify and amplify that opportunity. And so there's a building sort of conceptualized as a community gathering space and available for people to use both on campus and off campus. So meeting spaces and venues, and I think hoping that it fills that need that we're already sort of meeting as the campus today. One of our goals is to build lots of different kinds of housing, because we imagine that this is a place where anybody in our community could live. If you live here in Brattleboro or in this region, this place is for you too. It's not, we're not going to separate it out to all different kinds of incomes and family structures and ages and demographics. Really want to meet that need, because it's important in this housing crisis to recognize we need all kinds of housing. And so what you see here in this picture is sort of merging with the neighborhood, having houses and housing units that maybe are more small single family homes or triple deckers or townhouses. So not quite as dense as the apartment buildings that we're imagining on the central part of campus, but opportunities for smaller living, but that are separated out, and even a little circle of tiny homes potentially. So this is really meant to convey you want to blend into the neighborhood. That looks, have us at that entrance, because you'll see the three-way stop, and so we're maple curves around, but having options, a diversity of options for people to consider. So putting it all together, what you see is large residential, mixed residential commercial buildings potentially, or maybe there's a commercial building and residential. I think some of those details we will figure out. This is more of a 60,000 foot view of, again, conceptual design of how might we use the space to create housing. So you see the community center, the recreation center, those big buildings, and then the smaller buildings as options, different kinds of options for people to live. So I'm just zooming in a little bit, sort of, again, that town green idea, essential, that green space. If you remember the first drawing that had the green circles, are really the heart of the campus, being able to still, that large building that goes up the side of the hill only goes up partway to the hill. So some of you might know there's a yurt on the hill. It doesn't go much beyond that. So some of the green hill is taken, but it's the steep part. And then beyond that, that hill is really protected. And then finally, sharing the two-dimensional drawing. So looking down again on the buildings and the as flat structures that you might imagine, where they would go and how they would fit together. There are a couple purple buildings in this drawing, and that's really about maintenance and sort of back, support for the campus. We need to consider space for that. I also want to point out some of the concerns that come up in addition to traffic are parking, because that's a challenge on our campus now. This conceptual design does include some parking under buildings. So you might notice on the main road coming up the hill that there are roads sort of leading into potentially under those larger buildings. Part of that might be parking. So this represents 342 units. We don't have the mix of, but it'll be studio, 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, 3 bedroom. And again, commercial space. We're already at sort of a commercial space campus. I think the plan is 450 units of parking right now, parking spots. So, but again, I can't emphasize enough that this is conceptual, that can we build it? We don't know. We want to get feedback. Are we heading in the right direction? And should we keep exploring how this kind of housing could fit here? So I'm going to switch to show you what this might look like, actually, because it's hard for me to look at a two-dimensional drawing and see what it is that, imagine what it might look like. So I'm going to walk you through some what we call renderings. So the first picture I'm showing you is a view from the highway. So on the Wantastic side of 91, it's actually a shot of what the campus looks like. And what you're looking at is you can see Holton Hall, the top of Holton Hall, back tucked among the trees. And the one building that's really might be visible from the highway is that community space and that residential, that lower residential building that we were looking at. So at least when the leaves are on the trees, this is not, you're not going to be driving along 91 and suddenly something's going to pop out of nowhere and do this big development. It's not going to look, you know, the plan is, or the idea is for it to blend in. And this next picture is looking across the green towards, from the recreation building towards one of the large residential buildings, and off to the right, you can see that looking up the Connecticut River Valley. So lots of light and wood, and really trying to show vibrant space and people. Again, that heart of the campus, places for people to gather, really community building, building on what's already here. You know, again, people come to the Winter's Farmers Market, and then the kids, you know, slide down the hill, and you know, having this campus be a place that's responsive not only to people living here, but meets, you know, is welcoming to all members of the community, and has ways for them to connect. Then zooming out a little bit, this is actually a picture from across from the Wantastic side of the highway. So looking down, you see that front big building, Thomas Hall, and you can see Holton in the middle. And then those large structures that we're imagining for the dense housing around the edge of the green. And then you can see up the green, the hill where the building, you know, we're building partway up the hill, but really it's mostly protected. And then the soccer field in front still. So it gives you a sense of the proportions and how it fits into the landscape. You know, a lot of people have thought about, oh, that's a lot of housing for a small campus. And there are, you know, it's a design issue, and there are ways to do that. So here's another view looking up from the green. Some community gardens are imagined being here. So you can see on the left side of this picture, the Holton Hall, and then the building that would have the recreation connected to it, and then the residential building going up the side of the hill. This space gives you a sense of what the community building might look like, connecting, you know, looking out towards the green. I think this is actually a winter picture, but you know, how the buildings are connected, or you can see the buildings from one another, and really having spaces again for, maybe it's a cafe space, or, you know, a meeting space, or maybe it can be sometimes a cafe space and sometimes, you know, a place where there's a dance happening, or, you know, really flexible community spaces that people can use. We really also hope that you could live here and not have a car, or not, you know, not have to leave all the time, because maybe there's a small bodega on the corner, or you could get some coffee, or, you know, I think it's really important that we don't replicate what our community already does well, and also ways we might minimize, you know, people having to come and go by having some amenities on campus that people can access. It's really important for indoor recreation to be a part of what we do here. We got that feedback when we did some campus planning back in 2019, and we continue to get it. And as I said, Coker Hall, which is used a lot, has a wonderful gym space. So this is an imagining of what that could look like. And as you look through the building, you can see Holton Hall in the background. And again, none of these buildings is taller than Holton Hall. Another scene looking out from the community center, again, meeting space, conferences, weddings, blood drives, but looking up the Connecticut over to Wantastic and up the valley. This next picture gives you a sense of maybe what the units might look like, the apartments. I'm really thinking about efficiency. Our goal is sustainability, net zero buildings, and really building for the future. So not only thinking about how to minimize cars on campus, for instance, but also how to build so that we get maximum energy efficiency and keep it affordable in lots of different ways. So, you know, if we want everybody in our community to be able to live here, there are ways to make, to build efficiently, and size sometimes is one of the ways to do that. Maybe there are units that are more affordable because they're not huge, and that allows all different kinds of people to live here and all different family makeups. So it gives you a sense of what that, how we might use space in apartments to make, to maximize units. Here's another image looking down from the hill. You can sort of see Holton Hall sticking up to not quite in the center, and looking so down from the top of the what we call the Sound of Music Hill and up the Connecticut River Valley to give you a sense of scale. And then finally zooming out a little bit more, and you can really see where downtown Brattleboro is in this picture, where the river's going up the, coming down the valley. And so, and again, you can see Holton Hall right there in the middle of Thomas Hall. I think really conveying the sense of, yes, these are big buildings, and we're talking about a lot of space being used, and it actually can fit in the landscape. It's a big landscape. And so how to, I think that's one of the design challenges and opportunities. So this is, again, conceptual. Here's one way it could look. And how does that feel, and how do you connect with the neighborhood? Again, remembering that down along the entrance is more the townhouse, triple decker, single family homes. So blending into the neighborhood and then coming up onto campus where there's more dense living. This is what one way it might look. So it's a big project, and we're taking it in bite-sized pieces. So this is our first, our introduction of our conceptual design, and we're going to get feedback on it and try to figure out, does this work? This is, as much as it's our project or our Winston Prouty project, it's really our community project. We happen to own the land and be stewards of this property, but this property is really a community asset. And so we want feedback, and we want to know what people think and how we can continue meeting needs so that it really responds to what the community is looking for. A project this size is not happening all at once, not happening tomorrow. So we're starting to really think about the first phase or phases of the project, and what I think that also helps us think about the cost, and that's sort of more digestible and easy to understand. So wanting to figure out, and again, our hope is anybody who's on the campus now, who's a campus tenant now, our goal and commitment is to have them stay here if they want to. And so that opportunity is, how do we build what you need as we think about this? And if you're going to take down some buildings or space, some spaces where people are, that's going to inform how we phase it. We're going to have to build something maybe before we take stuff down. So these are some of the considerations for phasing that are going to go into our thinking and hopefully help us consider how to do this in a thoughtful way over time. We have no idea what the timeline is, because it will really matter about funding. We're going to keep sort of going through this in an iterative way and figuring out each step of the way what we need to do, and ultimately it will be about what we can pay for and where the funding can come from. So that's a big lift. In addition to that, but a step in that process is thinking about, just because you have a conceptual design, can you really build it? So that's the schematic design. So we're also thinking about that. If we go through, we get some feedback, we start implementing that into, could we build this, putting together a team of architects, engineers, people who can really help us think about, is this even possible? So that's sort of a very concrete next step as well, in addition to phasing. So finding funding for all of that will be important. We've had some great partners. People are really enthusiastic. We've gotten support, to get this far. So we're excited to keep going. So I would just offer that we are wide open to talking with people. You might have questions. Feel free to be in touch, and happy to go over this in person, or we present to groups, or whatever would help people understand, so that we can get feedback, comments, concerns. It's been very helpful to talk to people, and we already have ideas about what we might need to change. So it's not a done deal. I know sometimes when we look at these renderings, it's like, oh, well, it's happening. Like, well, yes, it's something is going to happen. We need to deal with the lack of housing in our community and our state. And this site, because it is tied to water and sewer infrastructure, and it's already developed, and it's in a really interesting location close to downtown. It's a great spot for considering this kind of development. So it's our responsibility to see what's possible here. And if it's not possible, at least we tried. I do believe that there is a lot that is possible, and that we're working together and getting feedback and working as a community. We can absolutely make something happen here. Will it be tomorrow? No. Would we be excited if we were starting phase one next year, a year from now? Again, so that's like next summer of 2024. that'd be pretty great, but we really don't know. How, you know, it will just depend on so many variables. So we're gonna keep leading the charge. We're gonna keep asking for feedback, and we're gonna hope that we can really be part of a solution for our community when it comes to building housing and creating community, frankly, and helping people connect and get what they need so that we can all thrive, including kids and families, which is what we do here at Winston Prouty. So feel free to be in touch. You know where to find us. And at the very least, please come enjoy the property now. Come see the views, come walk the trails. It's a really special place to be. Thank you.